I was going to take over here, give me a rest, I'll give you a rest. You're probably tired of listening to me.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome here tonight. We're in Inniskeen through Song and Story, led by Gene Carroll. We'll have the Sam Maguires coming up now, Gene Carroll, Tony Callahan, Gene McGeady. Shay. The Sam Maguires have come to us tonight from Mayo, and I don't want you making any smart remarks about what happened earlier in the year. Just give them the piece. Sorry, trade. And to change things a wee bit around tonight, we decided that we'd get you people who have had it handy all weekend to play your part. And there's a little thing here, hymns and words, and you'll be called on to sing your hymn. And now and again, the boys will call you at a certain time to give a song, and you'll join in. The band will have other music to play, they'll have other arrangements. And Gene and Pat, Tony, yeah. We're waiting for the master himself. Now, not your coaching. So we'll start off with saying a special welcome one and all to the village by the Fane. We're glad to have you here with us and greet you once again. Although it's now November and the nights are drawn in, it's not the cold that matters, but the fire that burns within. So rest now while you're with us and let your spirit free, and enjoy the song and story, like old times used to be. Remember Paddy Kavanagh. He's the man who set the scene, but you know you're always welcome here with us in Inniskeen. We have music full and plenty with Gene, Brendan and Sean Farrell. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce you to Gene Carroll.
Ladies and gentlemen, clergymen, friends, you're all very welcome to this Kavanagh Weekend. We'd like to introduce you to the present point of view among people around here, and indeed among you. You see, a whole lot of people are becoming confused about where they stand now between the old and the new, between repression and freedom, between sex and the other, the present state of the country and our mother the church. Heavy stuff, but we'll take it as it is up here for the moment with as much life and jizz as we can, and we'll try to portray in our own simple way the present state of things in the country today. So sit back there in your seat and relax, and don't be afraid of any attacks from up here. That is, enjoy yourselves. That's what we say, so let the barrel start the play.
Thank you.
We're very simple folk, but you probably find our music is even simpler. If you know the words of any of these songs, please join in.
You probably think we're part of the Mayo team with the crest on.
Hopefully we'll play a bit better for the Mayo team.
That won't be a problem.
So you're just going to start us off here now with a nice tune about a bit of fishing.
Walk down by the dockside where people told there. You the silvers and paints us all there. I heard enough fishermen singing the song. on or a load on me. Just give me a breeze and it will roll and sea. And I'll pay by your trees once and been sail along. When the wind and the rain were yours and song, you're happy up and my eyes in the lights. No more waiting on suddenly see. Just tell me old shades I'm taking the place, and I'll see it someday in Miller's Green. Wrap me up and my eyes in the lights. No more waiting on suddenly see. Just tell me old shades I'm taking the place, and I'll see them someday in Miller's Green.
Thank you very much.
Well, we're still sticking with the theme of the sea, and I think Eugene is leading out us off with one of his favourites.
Well, the mermaid. Any mermaids around Inniskeen? If there is, you either had a high tide or something. Right, yeah, you know this one off. Join me, it's your night, it's your night. On the Friday morning we set sail, and not so far from the land. We spied a mermaid upon the rock, with a comb and a glass in her hand. And the ocean waves do roll, and the stormy wind do blow. We would sail, skipping at the top, while the landlord lay down below, below, below. While the landlord lay down below. Then up spoke the captain of our gallant ship, and a fine man was he. Saying, I am gone away from Brooklyn by the sea, and tonight a widow she will be. And the ocean waves do roll, and the stormy wind do blow. We were sailing, skipping at the top, while the landlord lay down below, below, below. While the landlord lay down below. Up spoke the cabin boy of our gallant ship, and a fine young boy was he. Saying, I'm a good girl in Believe by the sea, and tonight she'll be there for me. And the ocean waves do roll, and the stormy wind do blow. And we were sailing, skipping out the top, while the landlord lay down below, below, below. While the landlord lay down below. And up spoke the cook of our gallant ship, and her rough and cookie was he. Then I care as much not for my pots and pans as I do for the bottom of the sea. And the ocean waves do roll, and the stormy winds do blow. They were sailing, skipping out the top, while the landlord lay down below, below, below. While the landlord lay down below. 3 times round for our gallant ship, and 3 times round spun she. 3 times round for our gallant ship, and she sang through the bottom of the sea. And the ocean waves do roll, let's hear it. And the stormy wind do blow. We were sailing, skipping out the top, while the landlord lay down below, below, below. While the landlord lay down below. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now we're going to hand you back to your host for the evening.
I have lived in important places. times when great events were decided. Who owned that half a rood of rock on no man's land, surrounded by our pitchfork Darren flames? I heard the Duffys shout down your soul, and Al McCabe stripped to the waist, seen step the plot to find blue cast steel. Here is the march, she said, along these iron stones. That was the year of the Munich ball. Which was more important, I inclined to lose my faith than Belarus and Gorchin, till Homer's ghost came whispering to my mind. He made the idiot from such a local row, gods make their own importance. I have lived in important places. The next man up here has lived in important places. Places like Cullyhanna, Crossmaglen and Guildford. He has taken part in the Bard of Armagh on a few occasions, and he also had a book of poetry and stories published. I am talking about Peter Callagher from Guildford, who's coming on his way. Come on up, Peter. Peter Callagher.
All yours, Peter. Well, there's a more than welcome here anyway. Because when you get up, you hang one of these things, you think you were going to say mass. If a man could get ahead of the collection. Well, I start this off. I come from Cullyhanna, Scariff Cullyhanna, not far from here. And thank God for Paddy Kavanagh, for he introduced us to a lovely rural society of Ireland. Anyway, when I was a young fella growing up, a big thing in our country, it wasn't going to the pictures, or going to the zoo, or going to the seaside. A big thing in our country that time was going to the fair with cattle. And you'd be getting up about 5 o'clock in the morning, and the neighbours, Michael Lee he would have maybe 2 heifers. Jeremy Quinn would be maybe 2 or 3 bullocks. Maybe James Murray would have a couple or 3 bullocks as well. Maybe Henry Waters would have maybe 2 or 3 more. And they'd all together maybe at the low crossroads or the upper crossroads. And the giant put the cattle all in together, because when the cattle was put all in together, it would have sort of like quieted them down a bit. Because the first, our house to Newton Hamilton to the fair would have been about 4.5 or 5 miles. And it was a lot, the cattle would be running a lot the first mile, and then to be slowed down, there would be a man sent in front of them to slow them down. And there was such a man in our country called Benny Sheridan, they call him. And this is Benny, he couldn't ride a bicycle, but because he could run like a bloody hare. And he was there that day that we went to the fair, and God, the crack would be mighty. We were only young lads, about 13 or 14 like. And you'd be down in Willie Blackwood's glen maybe for 2 or 3 days before that, cutting the sticks. A stick was an awful important thing. You'd be up there on the square, on the commons in Newton Hamilton, and there might be young girls about, and they'd be always inspecting your stick, you know what I mean? If you had a good stick, a good here's a stick, it could be the beginning of a big romance later on. And don't be afraid to laugh, it's all right. Anyway. It was an awful exciting time going to the fair. And when you get the cattle will be running, and by the time they'd be all excited, the cattle as well. And you get into Newton Hamilton and you're heading up Armagh Street, and there was this big footpath, and it would nearly be the width of the stage here. And when you be heading up the street, the women would be out, the housewives would be out with their brushes and their mops, because they didn't want the cows skittering on the footpath, because there would be red doors and green doors and stuff like that. And an old Jap, the cows slap, you see, up on the door. If it could drive at all, the devil in hell wouldn't get it off. And that way the housewives would be sitting. Now this fella, what did I call him, Benny Sheridan? Benny was kind of fond of the drink. And he'd be well warned the night before, for God's sake, don't be going to Beginnie's tonight, when you're going to the fair in the morning, don't be hungover and stuff like that. But Benny didn't listen, and he was as jittery as a cat on a tin roof that morning. And he was all red in the eyes and hungover. And they're running after the cattle. It was all excitement. By the time he got up Armagh Street, didn't he fall down and he fainted beside these two women who was out with the brushes. And he was laying there on the ground and the sweat was pouring of him. And one woman bent down and she says, I'll get him a drop of tea. I'll get him a wee mug of tea to revive him. The other woman said, you know, I think tea wouldn't be worth the damn. I'll get him a glass of brandy. The other one said, oh jeez, I could kill him all together. Not at all, I'll get him the tea. And the other woman was down with she said, I'll get him the brandy. And the other woman was down on her knees nearly beside Benny. And she said, no, I think a wee cup of tea. Benny says, we get shut your mouth and go to the house. Get the brandy, he says. But it was great excitement going to the fair. And later on, you'd go down to Slains with the cattle would be sold. You'd go down to Slains in Newton Hamilton and you'd have got a feed of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding and spuds and stuff like that. And I remember one day we were in it, and there was the tables, they were nearly all full, but there was a courthouse in Newton Hamilton at the time. And there was always a judge about. And the judge was in that day one day, and it was the only table that was kind of free, and nobody would sit with the judge there. But me and Benny went over there and sat down beside the judge anyway, and he would wee beady eyes in his head. But anyway, he was drinking this big tall glass of water. And after a while, Benny says to him, did you ever try the Guinness, Your Honour? And he looked at Benny for a long time with a very solemn face. He said, I didn't, he says, but I tried a whole lot that did. You see, the fair day wouldn't be good at all unless on the way home a young fella got a haircut. And there was a barber in Newton Hamilton called Mickey Boy. God, he could have cut about 200 or 300 heads in the one day. He was a powerful man cutting hair. But I remember going in anyway, me and Benny went in, and Benny didn't describe Benny on. Benny, with the owing to the drink and all, he didn't shave too often. And he would take with money, like he'd buy his own drink and stuff like that, but he didn't shave too often, and he had an awful old bushy beard. He was very narrow-jawed man, and the beard was sticking out maybe here, and it wouldn't be so bad up there, and an awful head of hair. He'd be ready for a haircut. And we were in anyone with about 15 or 16, and after a while it was Benny's turn, and he sat in the barber's chair anyway. And Mickey Moy says, Jesus, that's an awful looking old wogan of a beard you've on you. Do you never shave? And Benny says, I shave now, and he gave him once every month or two. God, this is Tara, says Mickey does it, Tara. And he started to shave him anyway, and he says, that's no hair down here. He says, I'll have to cut with the scissors first. Well, I tell you what's wrong, says Benny, I have very narrow jaws, he says. And I'll tell you what, says Mickey, I can fix that, he says. And he lifted up on the fireboard, he lifted down this wee round ball like a marble. And he lifted it down and he says to Benny, he says, put that in your mouth and put it in your jaw. You know, between your jaw and your gum. And it meant that one side of his mouth was sticking out like this, you know, like a bulge in his jaw. And so Mickey came along with the razor and he shaved him as clean as a whistle. It was great altogether. Now, says Mickey, he said, you see that wee ball? Flick it over to your left jaw, and it was sticking out like this, you see. And during the shave, Benny says, suppose you know, it's hard to talk with the ball, and he said, suppose you say that I spoiled the ball. Mickey says, don't worry, he says, like everybody else, bring it back in a few days. Some people were on the way home got their hair cut, you know what I mean? Other people went in to pack the tailors maybe for a half of a whiskey. Maybe 2 halves of whiskey and sometimes 3. And this was called Pack the Tailors because Pack M'Shane, his father was a tailor. And he was known as Pack the Tailor. And it was a wee small pub with a wee bar and here and that guitar. And it wasn't nearly the biggest estate here. And they were in there, and people would have had a few halfers and bottles, and the crack would be mighty. And there was only maybe 9 or 10 doctors there. But now a company that came in the north of Ireland, they used to have a man going around what was known as a whisky taster. He was a weights and measures man. And he come in one day to pack the tailors anyway, and the tailor's wife was a wee, small, petite woman, like a wee black-haired woman or going grey, like a wee nervous wee woman. But he came in anyway, and he sat at the counter for a while, and after a wee while he says, I'm the weights and measures man. It was known as a whisky taster by locals. He says, could I have a 1967 John Powers Old Leven half an whiskey? And she had very few optics start then, like you couldn't just went and done it like that. She had to take down the bottom and pour it with trembling hands, and she filled up this wee measure and left it. And he had the scales, and he tipped it on the scales, like, and when he weighed it and all, he threw it in his head like that. And he didn't swallow it, like. He rolled it around in his mouth from one jaw to the other, like the boy with the ball in his mouth. And after a while, he gargled it a wee bit, and then he swallowed it. And he looked at the tailor, he said, with a now solemn face, and he said, that wasn't 1967, that was 1971. And after a wee while longer, he asked for a 1969 John Jameson. The same thing. And she went through the same old procedure again of pouring this whisky into the glass, and after a while, he tipped it on his head and swallowed it. He said that wasn't 1969, it was 1972. And there was a wee fella, Paddy Shaw, and he was over at the far end of the bar, and he was raving tipsy, and he come running over like that, and he had a wee glass. He says to the man, would you taste that there? And the man did, he threw it on his head like that. He said, Jesus, that's pish, he says. I know what it is, says Paddy, but what age am I? Anyway, we're down about Newton Hamilton now, and I'll say a wee poem for you now. In our country, years and years ago, well, not that many years ago, when I was a young fella growing up, we lived out in the heart of the country. And you wouldn't have really heard the sounds of the country at all, the countryside, because when you live in the country, you don't really hear them. You're like a cat with his eyes closed, you can see nothing the other. But there was some sounds in the country. Say down below our house there was a big grove of sycamore trees. And in the heat of the evening there, you'd hear the jackdaws and the crows gathering in for the night, and we'd be making an awful racket. Maybe talking to one another, or maybe giving off to one another, I don't know. And then along our house there was an old shop, and my father had made a step in it, like, you know, for the drinking place for the cattle. And in the summertime, when there wouldn't be much water in the wee stream, it would trickle down, it maybe dropped into the rest of the shop, like, and maybe trickle down a foot or a foot and a half, and it made a wee gurgling noise. And I was away in Canada, and I'll tell you what, I came home after a year or two, and you see, when I heard that noise, it was a wonderful welcome home. However, there was another noise in the countryside every year, and it come around September, October. There was a man in our country down below Newton Hamilton, a place called Hamlet, and he had a thrashing mill, a yard. And he used to come up our country September or October, and on a clear day with the wind coming towards you, you could hear the thrashing mill in the distance. I'm sure many of you people here heard the thrashing mill in your time. And you'd hear it humming in the distance, and it would be going. Now and again, it would be a man at the top of the mill, he'd be feeding the sheaves into the drum. And it would sometimes, maybe a big sheaf went in like that, and go, you know, man, and that wee noise you'd hear all over the country. And it was a wonderful sound. And this man just says was such a nice fella, nice easy-going fella. He wore black coveralls, and never in my life seen him without a pair of coveralls on. And he come round the country, and I decided I'd write this. I talked about 20 years about writing this poem, and I only wrote it there a lot of years ago. And I just called this poem Josias. September, October, Josias would come, with Garvey behind him. Ah, boy, could she hum. The message delivered, no paper or pen, an army with pitchforks were marching again. Down by Fane Valley and over the hill, the children were shouting, "Da, there goes the mill." Excitement was high as it slowly drove by us. We got a wee wave and a smile from Josias. The year 1910, with times mighty rough, James Preston came home with a Bartley Ross Tough. It was pulled by 2 horses, a thrasher apart, with the engine behind and an old farm car. Around the mid-30s came by on the trail, the farmers were ready to hang up the flail. A sturdy new lass who sang like a bee, and pulled by a Fordson, old Model T. By this time Josias had taken the reins, manoeuvred his thrasher down twisty old lanes. A haggard or garden could often be narrow, or a gap that was only designed for a bar. To get the mill level required a skill, for stacks could be built on the brow of a hill. "Right, boys, she's level," Josias would say, "we'll go up to the house for a mouthful of tea." Josias would feed the sheaves into the drum. The sound was unique and ever so clear, for farmers alike it was music to hear. At present Josias is a man of renown for taking the countryside into the town. Linking the past to the future is rare, with the thrashing mill going flat out on the square. So good luck to Josias, this soft-spoken man, who shaved many heads in our lovely land. A day in my memory is lingering still, when Josias and Garvey came over the hill. Thank you. I'd just like to say at this moment that that man I wrote the poem for Josias, I gave him that poem, and him and the wife, they laughed the whole day. They were